After nearly 5 decades of keeping quiet, the leather-clad rock goddess who shattered every ceiling in the music industry is finally ready to talk. What really happened between Suzi Quatro and Chris Norman? The answer might surprise you, and it's not what the tabloids wanted you to believe. What's up, music lovers? Today we're diving deep into one of rock history's most fascinating partnerships, a collaboration that produced a chart-topping hit, sparked decades of rumors, and created a friendship that defied all the drama of the music industry. We're talking about Suzi Quatro and Chris Norman, the dynamic duo behind Stumblin In. And after all these years, Suzi is finally opening up about what Chris truly meant to her. Trust me, this story has everything. Unexpected chemistry, massive success, and a bond that transcended the typical Hollywood romance narrative everyone was desperate to create. But before we get into the juicy details of their collaboration, we need to understand who Suzi Quatro really is, because this woman didn't just break barriers, she demolished them with a bass guitar and a leather jumpsuit. Detroit, Michigan, 1950. A baby girl is born into a household where music isn't just background noise, it's the very air the family breathes. Susan K. Quatro entered a world where her father, Art, was already steeped in the music scene, and from her very first memories, rhythm and melody surrounded her like a warm embrace. But here's the thing about young Suzi. She wasn't content to just listen. While most girls her age were being told that instruments were for boys, Suzi was picking up a bass guitar and making it sing. By her teenage years, she'd already done something revolutionary. She formed an all-girl garage rock band with her sisters called the Pleasure Seekers. Let that sink in for a moment. This was the 1960s, an era when women in rock were expected to stand at the microphone looking pretty while men played the instruments. But Suzi and her sisters, they were out there playing their own instruments, writing their own rules, and absolutely refusing to accept the limitations society tried to place on them. The Pleasure Seekers became one of the first all-female rock bands to gain serious attention, and while they were tearing it up in Detroit, a legendary British producer named Mickey Most was about to change Suzi's life forever. Most saw something in Suzi that others had missed, not just talent, but an authenticity, a raw power that couldn't be manufactured or faked. The move to the United Kingdom in the early 1970s was gutsy. Suzi was leaving everything familiar behind, crossing an ocean to chase a dream in a country where she had no connections, no safety net. But sometimes the biggest risks yield the biggest rewards, and boy did this gamble pay off. 1973 became the year everything exploded. Her single, Can the Can, didn't just chart, it rocketed straight to #1 in the UK, selling over 2 million copies worldwide. This wasn't a fluke or a novelty hit, this was a statement. Suzi Quatro had arrived, and the music world would never be the same. Throughout the 70s, hit after hit followed. 48 Crash, Devilgate Drive, The Wild One, each song was a declaration of independence, powered by those punchy bass lines and Suzi's incredible vocal strength. And that leather jumpsuit? It became iconic, a visual representation of everything Suzi stood for: toughness, confidence, and an absolute refusal to play by anyone else's rules. But Suzi wasn't just a musician, she was a force of nature. When she appeared as Leather Tuscadero on Happy Days, she brought her rock and roll attitude to American television, proving she could command any stage, any medium. She was versatile, talented, and completely authentic. The impact she had on the next generation of female rockers cannot be overstated. Joan Jett, Chrissie Hynde, Debbie Harry, the Runaways, they all cite Suzi as a direct inspiration. The woman who showed them it was possible to pick up an instrument and rock as hard as any man. She didn't just open doors, she kicked them down. Now, behind every rock icon is a human being trying to navigate the complicated waters of relationships, family, and identity. In 1976, at the absolute peak of her career, Suzi married Len Tuckey, her longtime guitarist and collaborator. This wasn't just a marriage, it was a partnership between two people who understood the chaos and beauty of life on the road. They built a life together, welcoming 2 children and eventually purchasing a stunning manor house near Chelmsford in Essex, England in 1980.
Imagine trying to be an international rock star while also being a mother, trying to balance sold-out tours with school plays and bedtime stories. Suzi somehow managed to do it all, though it came with sacrifices and challenges that most people could never fully understand. After 16 years together, Suzi and Len divorced in 1992. These things happen, especially when two creative souls are navigating the intense pressures of the music industry. But Suzi found love again the following year when she married Rainer Haas, a German concert promoter who understood the demands of her career in ways few others could. The Essex Manor became more than just a house. It became a symbol of stability, a place where Suzi could be a mother, a grandmother, and herself when she wasn't being Suzi Quatro, the rock legend. When her daughter and grandchild moved back in 2006, the house came alive again with family energy. But when they eventually moved out in 2008, Suzi experienced what so many parents face: empty nest syndrome. That massive house, once filled with laughter and chaos, suddenly felt too big, too quiet. She even considered selling it, though ultimately she held on, dividing her time between Essex, Hamburg, and occasionally Detroit, three cities that represent different chapters of her incredible journey.
Now we get to the heart of our story. It's 1978, and Suzi Quatro is already an established rock icon. Meanwhile, Chris Norman is riding high with his band Smokie, known for their smooth, folk-inspired pop-rock sound. These two artists came from different musical worlds, different styles, and different audiences. Nobody could have predicted what was about to happen. Enter producer Mike Chapman, the mastermind who decided to pair these two together for a duet. The song was called Stumblin In, and from the moment Suzi and Chris first sang together, something magical occurred. It wasn't forced, it wasn't awkward, it was effortless. According to Suzi, who's now speaking more openly about this chapter of her life at age 75, Chris Norman was unlike anyone she'd worked with before. Chris was, without question, one of the easiest people I ever worked with, she revealed. In an industry notorious for massive egos and territorial behavior, Chris brought something different to the table: humility, warmth, and genuine respect. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and when Stumblin' In was released, it became a phenomenon that shocked both artists. The song climbed to #4 on the Billboard Hot 100 in America and became an international sensation. But here's what's fascinating. Neither Suzi nor Chris expected this level of success. "We both thought it would just be another song, maybe a minor hit if we were lucky," Suzi has admitted. They were just two professionals doing their jobs, creating something together without any grand expectations. And sometimes that's when the magic happens, when you're not trying to manufacture a hit, but simply letting the music flow naturally. Suzi describes their studio sessions as filled with laughter, mutual respect, and a sense of shared adventure. Chris had this warmth about him, she said. He wasn't just a great singer, he was a gentleman. In a cutthroat industry where competition often trumps collaboration, their dynamic was refreshingly different. Of course, fans and media couldn't help themselves. When you have two attractive, talented artists creating such obviously genuine chemistry, the rumor mill goes into overdrive. Was there a secret romance? Were they hiding a passionate affair behind their professional collaboration? But Suzi has consistently pushed back against these narratives, and now, at 75, she's setting the record straight once and for all. "People love to imagine romances behind the scenes," she said with a laugh. "The truth is, we adored each other, but it was about the music." Both Suzi and Chris were married at the time, and they respected those commitments. What they shared was something that Suzi argues is actually more rare and valuable than a fleeting romance, a genuine friendship and a musical partnership that created something timeless. "What we had was a friendship and a musical partnership that created something timeless, and honestly, that's even more special in some ways," Suzi reflects. In a world obsessed with romantic drama, this might not be the scandalous story people wanted, but it's a far more meaningful one. Looking back now, Suzi sees Stumblin' In not just as a commercial success, but as a pivotal moment that revealed a different dimension of her artistry.
"I will always be the leather-clad rocker with the bass guitar," she's reflected. "But for millions of people, I'll also always be the voice on that duet with Chris. And I don't mind that. I'm proud of it. It showed another side of me, softer, more vulnerable, but still strong." This is what great artists do. They refuse to be boxed in. Suzi could have stuck with only the hard rock persona, the tough-as-nails image that made her famous. Instead, she embraced the opportunity to show range, to prove that strength and vulnerability aren't opposites, they're two sides of the same coin. Even today, more than 4 decades later, Suzi and Chris remain friends. When they reconnect for interviews or anniversary celebrations of their hit, there's no awkwardness, no faded connection. "Chris is one of those people you don't forget," Suzi has said fondly. "When we see each other now, it's like no time has passed. We slip right back into that easy camaraderie we had in the studio all those years ago. That's rare, and it's something I treasure." The song itself carries a message that resonates across generations. It's about love that's uncertain, about finding your way through something new and exciting. Everyone, no matter how old they are, can relate to stumbling into love or stumbling into something unexpected that changes their life. That's why the song lasts. And she's absolutely right. Stumblin' In endures not because it was heavily promoted or because of some marketing genius, but because it captured a universal human experience. That moment when you're falling into something new and you're not quite sure where you'll land, but you're willing to leap anyway.
But Suzi Quatro didn't stop with music performance alone. As she moved through different phases of her career, she found new ways to share her passion and knowledge. Her work with BBC Radio 2, hosting shows like Rocking with Suzi Q and Wake Up Little Suzi, allowed her to connect with audiences in an entirely different way. These weren't just music shows, they were masterclasses in rock history, filled with Suzi's personal stories, behind-the-scenes anecdotes, and genuine enthusiasm for the genre she helped shape. Listeners got to hear not just Suzi the performer, but Suzi the historian, the storyteller, the woman who lived through some of rock's most transformative decades. At 75, Suzi continues to tour, record, and inspire. While many artists from her era have retired or faded from the scene, Suzi remains as passionate and energetic as ever. Albums like Back to the Drive and No Control proved she could still create dynamic, relevant music that resonates with both longtime fans and new listeners discovering her for the first time. Her stage presence hasn't diminished one bit. That electric energy, that commanding voice, that absolute certainty in who she is, it's all still there. And when you watch her perform today, you're not seeing someone going through the motions or cashing in on nostalgia. You're seeing an artist who genuinely loves what she does and refuses to let age define her capabilities. So what's the truth about Suzi Quatro and Chris Norman? The truth is actually more beautiful than any manufactured scandal could ever be. They were two talented artists who came together, created something magical, and maintained a genuine friendship that has lasted nearly 5 decades. In an industry notorious for burned bridges, betrayals, and bitter feuds, Suzi and Chris represent something refreshingly different. They showed that you can have deep artistic chemistry, create something that touches millions of people, and maintain respect and affection for each other without any drama or complications. When asked to name the highlights of her remarkable career, Suzi doesn't hesitate to place her collaboration with Chris Norman near the very top. That song was a gift, she concluded, and Chris was part of that gift. I'll always be grateful for him, for the music we made together, and for the memories that have lasted a lifetime. And really, isn't that what we should all aspire to in our collaborations, our friendships, our creative endeavors? To create something meaningful, to treat people with respect and kindness, and to build connections that last long after the spotlight fades? Suzi Quatro didn't just break barriers as a female rock pioneer. She showed us how to maintain dignity, authenticity, and genuine human connection in an industry that often demands you sacrifice all three. She proved you can be tough and tender, strong and vulnerable,
a rock icon, and a devoted mother and friend. If Suzi Quatro's story inspired you, if you're now curious about the music that changed generations, or if you simply appreciate hearing about genuine artistry and authentic human connection, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into music history's most fascinating stories. Drop a comment below and tell me, what's your favorite Suzi Quatro song? Are you Team Can the Can or Team Stumblin' In? Have you been inspired by her trailblazing career? I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you enjoyed this video, share it with someone who loves classic rock, who appreciates stories of genuine friendship in the entertainment industry, or who simply needs to hear about a woman who refused to let anyone define her limits. Thanks for watching, music lovers. Until next time, keep stumbling into the things that make life beautiful. Keep breaking your own barriers, and never forget, the most lasting legacies are built on authenticity, not scandal. Rock on!